So the demographics of the staff are overwhelmingly white. The demographics of those in custody are still predominantly white. However, the non-white populations are disproportionately represented in the persons in custody. And I think in listening to Mr. Kaling's description of this, I think we have a pretty clear idea of why there's some difficulty and some disconnect between staffing and those in custody. So for those of us who are a little more well-versed in issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion, we know that we don't use the word minority anymore, right? So we use words like BIPOC, terms like BIPOC, which stand for Black, Indigenous, People of Color. We do talk about LGBTQIA+, and we talk about persons and then their ethnicity, right? Not a group name, for example. So how do we find more folks? How do we find more staff who represent and look like those in custody? Yes, we do have more folks who are non-white who come most usually, in our case, from Hampden County. And there we have folks who are Latinx, and there are a variety of terms that they prefer to use. Mostly, they prefer to be called by whatever it is that their actual ethnicity is, whether they're Puerto Rican or Dominican or whatever. So it might be Latinx, might be Hispanic, but it might be particular to their own ethnicity. We do need more women in corrections. I am glad that that issue came up, because very recently I spoke with a formerly incarcerated individual, and he said, we absolutely need a woman sheriff. We need someone who is both nurturing and yet no nonsense. And we need women because in these roles, because specifically in security officers' roles, correctional officers' roles, we need women in those positions because it does de-escalate and bring down the level of tension very often. So I think we're overlooking a very rich area of population that we can begin to recruit and look for a very different model of correctional officer, like the correctional case manager, for example, that model of officer. So we do need, we need way more training for our staff. I very recently went through a 5-month series on anti-racism, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I can tell you it was entirely absent during my 4.5 years at the Hampshire County Jail. And so the fact that we haven't addressed that in corrections, and it's system-wide, but it's particularly an issue at the Hampshire County Jail. The fact that we haven't addressed that there is a glaring problem, specifically for Hampshire County, where we care a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And by focusing on education, which prioritizes this issue, the issue of access and equity, the fact that there are so many people sitting, especially in the pretrial portion of the facility, who are not getting services, those people are not being well served. And we need to address issues of demographics and how our staff meets the needs of those in custody. Thank you.